Jake Martinez walked into the training hall with his heart beating fast. The room was huge, bigger than any gym he had ever seen back on Earth. The ceiling stretched up so high that he could barely see the lights hanging from metal beams. The floor was covered with blue training mats that felt soft under his feet. He was not alone. 30 other students stood in neat rows waiting for class to begin. But Jake was different from all of them. He was the only human in the entire Galactic Combat Academy. The other students were aliens. Some were tall, some were short, but all of them looked more dangerous than Jake. To his left stood a creature named Krath. He had 4 arms, each one packed with muscles that looked like they could bend steel bars. His skin was dark red and covered with scales that acted like natural armor. When Krath moved, Jake could hear the scales clicking together like pieces of rock. On his right was Lissa. She looked like she was made of colored glass. Her body was see-through and kept changing colors from blue to green to purple. Jake had learned that she could change how solid her body was. She could become as hard as diamond or as soft as water whenever she wanted. Behind him was a small flying creature named Pip. He had wings that kept him floating a few feet off the ground. His people came from cities built in the clouds, and they were born knowing how to fight in the air. Even though Pip was small, Jake had seen him move faster than the eye could follow. These were just 3 of his classmates. There were dozens of other species in the room. Some had extra eyes, some had tails, and some had body parts that Jake did not even have names for. Every single one of them had been training in combat since they were young. Every single one of them belonged here. Jake was 16 years old. He had taken some karate classes back home, but that was it. He was good at sports and could run fast, but compared to these aliens, he felt weak and slow. He was the first human to ever attend this academy, and he was starting to wonder if that was a mistake. The doors at the front of the hall opened with a loud bang. Instructor Vexthor walked in and the room fell silent. He was huge, at least 8 feet tall, with green scaly skin and yellow eyes that looked like a snake's eyes. He came from a warrior race called the Saurians. His people had been fighting wars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. Vexthor looked around the room. His eyes passed over each student, judging them. When his eyes landed on Jake, they stopped. His mouth curved into something that might have been a smile, but it did not look friendly. "Students," Vexthor said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "Today we continue our study of the dragon form. This is an ancient combat technique that has been passed down for thousands of years. It requires perfect balance, complete control, and natural fighting ability." He walked to the center of the mat. The dragon form is not easy. Many of you have been practicing for weeks and still cannot do it correctly, but that is expected. Only the best warriors can master this form. Vexthor began to move. His huge body flowed like water, shifting from one position to another. He balanced on one foot while his arms moved in circles. Then he spun, dropped low to the ground, and rose again without losing his balance. Every movement was smooth and powerful. It looked like a dance and a fight at the same time. When he finished, he stood still and looked at the class. "That is the dragon form. Today, each of you will demonstrate what you have learned. We will start at the front row and move back." Jake felt his stomach drop. He was in the 3rd row. That meant he would have to perform in front of everyone. The first student was a tall blue alien with 3 legs. He moved to the center of the mat and began the form. His movements were stiff and awkward, but he got through most of it without falling. Vexthor nodded. "Acceptable. You need more practice, but you understand the basics." The second student did better. The third student fell twice but kept trying. One by one, the students performed the dragon form. Some were good, some were bad, but all of them tried their best. Then it was Jake's turn. He walked to the center of the mat. His legs felt weak and his hands were shaking. He could feel everyone watching him. He took a deep breath and tried to remember everything Vexthor had taught them over the past week. He started the form. He lifted his right foot and tried to balance on his left, but his balance was wrong. He wobbled, put his foot down too quickly, and had to take a step to keep from falling. Someone laughed. It was Krath, the 4-armed alien. "Look at the human. He cannot even stand on one foot." Other students started laughing too. Jake felt his face get hot. He tried again, but his movements were clumsy and wrong. His arms were at the wrong angle. His feet were too close together. Everything felt wrong. He got through maybe half of the form before he had to stop. He was breathing hard and felt embarrassed. He looked at Vexthor, hoping for some encouragement, but the instructor was not smiling. His yellow eyes looked cold and disappointed. Humans, Vexthor said slowly. He said the word like it tasted bad in his mouth. So eager to be warriors, so desperate to prove they belong here, but you cannot change what you are. He walked closer to Jake. Your species is weak. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. You are slow compared to most species. You are fragile. One good hit and your bones break. Jake wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. Perhaps, Vexthor continued, humans should focus on what they do well. Trading, talking, making peace. These are good skills. But the warrior's path is not for everyone. It is not for you. The room was completely silent now. No one was laughing anymore. Some of the students looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up to defend Jake. You may return to your place, Vexthor said, turning away from him. Jake walked back to his spot in the third row. His face was burning, and he could feel tears trying to form in his eyes, but he refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Krath leaned over and whispered, Maybe you should go home, human. This place is for real warriors, not soft creatures like you. The rest of the class continued, but Jake barely paid attention. He watched the other students perform the dragon form. Most of them were better than him. Even Pip, who was half his size, could balance better and move more smoothly. When class finally ended, Jake was the first one out the door. He walked quickly through the metal hallways of Station Kepler 9, not looking at anyone. The station was huge, built to house thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds. Humans had only been allowed to join the galactic community for 5 years. They were still the new kids, still trying to prove they belonged. Jake reached his quarters and pressed his hand against the door panel. It slid open with a soft hiss. He stepped inside and let the door close behind him. The room was small but comfortable. It had a bed, a desk, a bathroom, and a window that looked out into space. Jake could see stars and distant planets. Somewhere out there, 300 light-years away, was Earth. His home, his family, everything familiar. He sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. Maybe Vexthor was right. Maybe humans were not meant to be warriors. Maybe he should quit the academy and go back to Earth. But even as he thought it, something inside him refused to accept it. Humans had spent thousands of years surviving on Earth. They had fought predators, survived ice ages, and built civilizations from nothing. They had gone from caves to spaceships in just a few thousand years. If humans could do all that, surely one human could learn an alien fighting technique. Jake lifted his head and looked at his computer screen. An idea was forming in his mind. He stood up, walked to the desk, and started typing. He needed to see that form again. He needed to understand it. He was not going to quit. He was going to prove Vexthor wrong. Jake sat at his desk for 3 hours straight, watching videos of the dragon form. The Academy's computer system had recordings of every class, and Jake pulled up all of them. He watched Vexthor demonstrate the form over and over again. He slowed the videos down, watched them frame by frame, and took notes on everything he saw. The door to his quarters opened, and his roommate walked in. Cole Peterson was 20 years old and worked as an engineer on the station. He was not a student at the academy. He was part of the support staff that kept the human delegation running. He carried 2 trays of food from the cafeteria. Still watching those videos? Cole asked, setting one tray on Jake's desk. You have been staring at that screen since you got back from class. You need to eat something. Jake did not look away from the screen. I have to figure this out. Cole sat on his own bed and started eating. Look, man, I heard what happened in class today. Word travels fast on this station. Everyone is talking about how Vexthor called you out. Great, Jake said. His voice was flat. Hey, do not let it get to you, Cole said. That instructor is known for being tough on new students. Especially humans. Some of these aliens do not think we belong here. Maybe they are right, Jake said quietly. No way, Cole said, shaking his head. Do not start thinking like that. Humans did not travel across the galaxy just to give up when things get hard. We are survivors. That is what we do best. Jake finally looked away from the screen. Surviving is not the same as being warriors. Vexthor was right about one thing. We do not have natural weapons. We are not as strong as most species. We are not as fast. What do we have? Cole thought about it for a moment. We are smart. We learn fast. We adapt to anything. Maybe, Jake said. He turned back to the screen. I have been watching Vexthor do this form for hours now. There is something about it that I cannot figure out. It looks like it should be impossible, but he does it easily. He has been training his whole life, Cole pointed out. You have had a week. I know, Jake said. But there has to be a reason why it works. Every movement has a purpose. Every position has a reason. I just need to understand what those reasons are. He played the video again. This time he watched more carefully. Vexthor started the form by shifting his weight to his right foot. Then his left foot came up slowly and his whole body began to turn. His arms moved in a circle and his balance stayed perfect. Jake paused the video. Look at that, he said, pointing at the screen. See how his center of gravity stays right over his right foot? He is not fighting gravity. He is using it. Cole walked over to look at the screen. I guess so. I do not know much about fighting, but yeah, he looks balanced. Jake started the video again. He watched the next few movements. Vexthor dropped low, swept his leg around, and then rose back up without using his hands. The whole time, his center of gravity stayed perfectly controlled. It is physics, Jake said suddenly. The whole form is based on physics. Balance, momentum, center of gravity. It is not about being strong. It is about being efficient. Okay, Cole said. But knowing that does not mean you can do it. Not yet, Jake agreed. But it is a start. He spent the rest of the night watching videos and taking notes. Cole eventually went to sleep, but Jake kept working. He watched demonstrations from other instructors. He found old recordings from years ago. He even found videos of the dragon form being performed by different alien species. Each species did it a little differently. The ones with forearms used their extra limbs for balance. The ones with tails used them as counterweights. The flying species used their wings to make tiny adjustments in the air. But underneath all the differences, the basic principles were the same. The form was about efficiency. Every movement had to serve a purpose. Every transition had to maintain or build momentum. If you fought against the form, it would defeat you. But if you worked with it, if you understood its rhythm, it became easier. Jake finally went to sleep at 3 a.m. His alarm went off 4 hours later. He felt tired, but his mind was awake and alert. He had an idea. He cleared some space in the middle of his quarters and tried the form himself. He did not try to copy Vexthor exactly. Instead, he tried to understand the principles. He focused on his center of gravity, on making smooth transitions, on not wasting any energy. He fell on his first attempt, and his second, and his third. Cole woke up to the sound of Jake hitting the floor. "What are you doing?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "Practicing," Jake said, getting back to his feet. "At 7 a.m? I do not have much time," Jake said. "The next class is in 3 days. I want to be ready." Cole watched him for a minute. "You are serious about this?" "Yes," Jake said. He tried the form again. This time he got a little further before losing his balance. "You are going to hurt yourself," Cole warned. "Probably," Jake agreed, but he did not stop. For the next 3 days, Jake barely left his quarters except to eat and use the bathroom. He watched videos, practiced movements, and studied the theory behind the form. He covered his desk with notes and diagrams. He drew pictures showing how the body should move, where the weight should be, how the arms and legs should coordinate. His body started to ache. His knees got bruised from falling. His muscles got sore from repeating the same movements over and over. But slowly, very slowly, he started to improve. On the second day, he made it halfway through the form before falling. On the third day, he made it 3/4 of the way through. Each time he failed, he learned something new. Each time he fell, he understood a little more. Cole became his unofficial coach. He would watch Jake practice and point out when his balance was off, or when his movements looked wrong. "Your left arm is too high," he would say, "or you are leaning too far forward." Jake was grateful for the help. Having another person watch him made it easier to spot his mistakes. On the third night, Jake tried the form one more time. He had been practicing for 12 hours straight and his body was screaming at him to stop. But he wanted to try one more time. He started the form. His right foot planted firmly on the ground. His left foot came up. His body turned smoothly. His arms moved in the correct pattern. He dropped low, swept his leg, and rose back up. He was doing it. The movements were flowing together. He was not fighting the form anymore. He was working with it. He reached the final position, the part where he had to balance on one foot with his arms extended. He held the position for 5 seconds, then slowly lowered his foot to the ground. He had done it. The complete dragon form start to finish without falling. Cole jumped up from his bed. You did it! That was perfect. Jake was breathing hard. Sweat was running down his face. His legs felt like they were made of rubber, but he was smiling. It was not perfect, he said, but it was complete. I made it through the whole form. Are you going to show Vexthor? Cole asked. Jake thought about it. Yes, tomorrow in class. I am going to ask him if I can demonstrate again. He might say no, Cole warned. He did not seem like he wanted to give you another chance. Then I will insist, Jake said. I came here to learn. I came here to prove that humans belong in this academy. If I let him stop me after one bad performance, then he was right about me. Cole nodded. Okay, but get some sleep first. You look like you were about to fall over. Jake collapsed onto his bed. His muscles ached, his joints hurt, and he was more tired than he had ever been in his life. But he felt good. He had taken something impossible and made it possible through hard work and determination. That was the human way. When faced with a challenge that seemed too big, humans did not give up. They studied, they practiced, they adapted, and they overcame. They had done it for thousands of years on Earth, and they would keep doing it among the stars. Jake closed his eyes and fell asleep almost instantly. Tomorrow he would face Vexthor again. Tomorrow he would show everyone what humans could do when they put their minds to something. Tomorrow he would prove that he belonged here. Jake walked into the training hall with his head held high. His body still ached from 3 days of constant practice, but he ignored the pain. His mind was clear and focused. He knew what he had to do. The other students were already there, standing in their usual rows. When Jake walked in, some of them turned to look at him. He heard whispers and saw a few aliens pointing at him. Everyone had heard about what happened in the last class. Everyone knew that Vexthor had called him weak and told him to give up. Krath saw him and laughed. The human came back. I thought you would have quit by now and gone home to your soft little planet. Jake did not respond. He walked to his place in the third row and stood at attention. He kept his eyes forward, not looking at anyone. Lisa, the crystalline alien, stood near him. She spoke quietly and her voice sounded like wind chimes. You should not be here. The instructor was clear. Humans are not meant for combat training. You will only embarrass yourself again. Jake still did not respond. He had nothing to prove to these students. He only had something to prove to himself and to Vexthor. The doors opened and Vexthor entered. The room fell silent immediately. The instructor walked to the front of the class and looked at each student. When his eyes landed on Jake, he paused for a moment. His face showed surprise, then something that might have been disappointment. I see everyone has returned, Vexthor said. His voice was cold. Even those who should have learned their lesson. Very well. Today we will continue practicing the dragon form. I expect to see improvement from all of you. He began walking between the rows of students. The dragon form is not just a series of movements. It is a test of character. It shows who has the discipline to become a true warrior and who is wasting everyone's time. His eyes landed on Jake again. Some beings are born to be warriors. Others are born to be servants, merchants, or diplomats. There is no shame in accepting what you are. The shame comes from pretending to be something you are not. Jake took a deep breath. Now was the time. He stepped forward from his row. Instructor Vexthor, he said. His voice was steady and clear. I request permission to demonstrate the dragon form. The room went completely silent. Every student turned to stare at Jake. Vexthor's eyes narrowed. You cannot be serious, the instructor said. I am very serious, Jake replied. I have been practicing. I would like another chance to demonstrate what I have learned. Krath burst out laughing. This is ridiculous. He could not even balance on one foot 3 days ago. Now he thinks he can perform the full form? Other students started talking among themselves. Some were laughing. Others looked uncomfortable. A few looked curious about what Jake was planning. Vexthor held up his hand and everyone went quiet. He stared at Jake for a long moment. You have had less than 2 weeks of training. Most students practice for months before they attempt a full demonstration. Do you really think 3 days of practice will make a difference? I would like to try, Jake said simply. Why? Vexthor demanded. So you can fail again in front of everyone? So you can prove me right about your species? What is the point of this? Jake met the instructor's eyes. The point is that I came to this academy to learn. One failure does not mean I should give up. If I let fear of failure stop me, then I do not deserve to be here. For a moment, something flickered in Vex Thor's eyes. It might have been respect or it might have been anger. Jake could not tell. "Very well," Vex Thor said finally. "If you want to embarrass yourself again, I will not stop you. Perhaps it will teach the others an important lesson about knowing your limits." He gestured to the center of the mat. "Come, show us what 3 days of practice has taught you." Jake walked to the center of the mat. Every eye in the room was on him. He could feel the weight of their stares, could hear them whispering. Most of them expected him to fail. Some of them wanted him to fail, but Jake did not care about them anymore. He had spent 3 days learning something important. The dragon form was not about impressing others. It was not about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about understanding discipline and control. He stood in the starting position. His feet were shoulder-width apart. His arms hung relaxed at his sides. His breathing was slow and even. He closed his eyes for just a moment, centering himself. In his mind, he reviewed everything he had learned. The form was a circle. Each movement flowed into the next. Balance was not about being still. It was about controlled movement. Momentum was not the enemy, it was the tool. He opened his eyes. Krath called out from the side. "Watch him fall again, everyone. The human is about to learn his lesson." Vex Thor did not tell Krath to be quiet. The instructor just watched Jake with cold, judging eyes. Jake ignored them all. He thought about the videos he had watched. He thought about the hours of practice. He thought about every mistake he had made and every lesson he had learned from those mistakes. Then he began. His first movement was different from what everyone expected. When Vex Thor demonstrated the form, he started with a powerful, aggressive stance. But Jake started with something softer. His right foot slid forward smoothly. His left hand rose in a slow, controlled arc. His body began to turn. The movement was small, economical, precise. He was not trying to copy Vex Thor. He was performing the form in a way that worked for his human body. The whispers in the room stopped. Students leaned forward to watch more carefully. Jake's body flowed from the first position into the second. His weight shifted from his right foot to his left, but the transition was so smooth that it looked effortless. His arms moved in the correct pattern, not too fast and not too slow. Vex Thor's eyes widened slightly. This was not what he had expected to see. Jake continued. He dropped into a low stance, his legs bending until his back knee almost touched the mat. Then he swept his right leg around in a wide arc. His balance never wavered. His center of gravity stayed perfectly controlled. Pip, the flying alien, made a small sound of surprise. That sweep had been difficult for him to learn, and he had been training for months. The human had just done it perfectly. Jake rose from the low stance, his left leg coming up as his right leg pushed off the ground. For a moment, he balanced on just the ball of his right foot. His left leg extended behind him and his arms spread wide. It was the dragon's ascent, one of the hardest parts of the form. Lissa's crystalline body flashed bright colors. She had taken 3 tries to master that position. The human had done it on his first attempt, but Jake was not finished. He transitioned into the dragon's coil, the most complex part of the entire form. His body moved through a series of strikes and blocks, fighting invisible enemies from all directions. His arms became a blur. His legs made tiny adjustments, keeping him perfectly balanced. Sweat began to run down his face. His muscles were burning. 3 days of constant practice had left him exhausted, and performing the full form was pushing him to his limit. But he could not stop now. He was so close. The room was completely silent except for the sound of Jake's movements. Every student watched in disbelief. This was the human who had failed so badly just 3 days ago. This was the being that Vex Thor had called weak and unsuited for combat training. Yet here he was, performing the dragon form with more skill than most of the advanced students. Vex Thor stood frozen, his mouth slightly open. In his 30 years of teaching, he had never seen a student improve this much in such a short time. It should not be possible. No species could learn this fast, but humans, he was beginning to realize, did not care about what should be possible. Jake moved into the final sequence. His body spun once, twice, 3 times. Each spin was perfectly controlled. Then he began to slow down, his movements becoming smaller and more focused. He was gathering all the momentum from the earlier parts of the form and channeling it into one final position. The dragon's rest. The ending stance that Required perfect stillness after all that. Movement. Jake planted his right foot firmly on the ground. His left leg came up slowly, bending at the knee. His arms extended to his sides, parallel to the ground. His head tilted back slightly, his eyes looking up at the ceiling. And then he stopped moving completely. He stood like a statue, balanced on one leg, as still as stone. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Jake held the position without wavering. His breathing was controlled despite the exhaustion. His balance was perfect. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he slowly lowered his left leg to the ground. He stood normally, his arms at his sides. Then he turned to face Vexthor and bowed respectfully. The silence in the room was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. No one even seemed to breathe. Then Jake straightened up from his bow and waited for the instructor's response. The silence lasted for 5 full heartbeats. Then the training hall erupted into chaos. Students started shouting. Some were yelling in excitement, others in disbelief. Krath's forearms hung at his sides as he stared at Jake with his mouth open. Lisa's body was flashing through colors so fast that it was hard to look at her. Pip was flying in circles near the ceiling, too shocked to stay still. "That is impossible," someone shouted. "Humans cannot do that." "He did it perfectly," another student said. "I have been training for 6 months and I still cannot hold the dragon's rest that long." "It has to be a trick," Krath insisted. "There is no way he learned that in 3 days." Vexthor held up his hand and the room slowly went quiet. But even the instructor looked shaken. His yellow eyes were wide, and his scaled face showed an emotion that Jake had never seen there before. Confusion mixed with something that might have been respect. The instructor walked slowly toward Jake. His heavy footsteps echoed in the now silent hall. He circled Jake once, looking him up and down as if trying to find some hidden trick or device that had helped him perform the form. "How long did that take?" Vexthor asked quietly. One of the students checked the training hall's computer. 13 seconds, instructor." From start to finish, Vexthor's eyes widened even more. 13 seconds? "Yes, instructor," the student confirmed. "That is faster than your demonstration." And his form was perfect. No errors, no balance issues, no wasted movement. Vexthor turned back to Jake. "Explain. How is this possible? 3 days ago you could not balance on one foot. Now you perform the dragon form better than students who have trained for months. How?" Jake was breathing hard. His legs were shaking from exhaustion, but he kept his voice steady. "I studied, instructor. I watched every recording I could find. I practiced for 3 days with almost no sleep. I fell down hundreds of times in my quarters. I made mistakes and learned from them. And I tried to understand the principles behind the form, not just copy the movements." "Principles?" Vexthor repeated. "Yes," Jake said. "The dragon form is not about being strong or fast. It is about understanding balance, momentum, and efficiency. Every movement has a purpose. Every transition serves a function. Once I understood that, I stopped trying to force my body to do what it could not do. Instead, I worked with what my body can do." He took a breath. "Humans are not as strong as most species here. We are not as fast. We do not have natural weapons or armor. But we are good at learning. We are good at adapting. We are good at finding solutions to problems that seem impossible." Vexthor was quiet for a long moment. He looked at Jake with new eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. "You studied for 3 days with no sleep?" he asked. "I slept a little," Jake admitted. "Maybe 4 hours a night. But most of the time I was watching videos, taking notes, and practicing." "Show me your quarters," Vexthor demanded suddenly. Jake blinked in surprise. "My quarters? Right now?" "Yes, I want to see where you practiced." "I want to see these notes you took," Jake nodded. "Okay, follow me." The walk to Jake's quarters took 10 minutes. Vexthor followed him through the metal hallways of the station. Other beings stopped to stare at the sight of the massive Saurian instructor, walking with the small human student. Word had already started to spread about what happened in the training hall. When they reached his room, Jake pressed his hand to the door panel. It slid open and Vexthor stepped inside. He had to duck his head to fit through the human-sized doorway. The room was a mess. Jake's desk was covered with papers full of notes and diagrams. His computer screen showed a paused video of the dragon form. The floor had scuff marks from where Jake had been practicing. There were even small dents in one of the walls where he had fallen into it. Vexthor walked to the desk and picked up one of the papers. It showed a detailed drawing of the human body with arrows indicating how weight should shift during the form. There were notes written in small, careful handwriting. Center of gravity must stay over support foot. Momentum carries from one movement to next. Do not fight the rotation, guide it. The instructor picked up another paper. This one had timing calculations. Average form takes 18-20 seconds. Wasted movement at transitions adds 3 to 4 seconds. Smoother transitions could reduce to 13-15 seconds. Vexthor looked at Jake. You calculated how to make the form faster? I wanted to be efficient, Jake explained. I am not as strong as you, so I cannot afford to waste energy. Every movement has to count. Vexthor picked up more papers. There were dozens of them. Notes about balance, diagrams showing muscle movement, calculations about center of gravity, even sketches of different alien species performing the form, with notes about how each species adapted the technique to their unique body structure. You did all this in 3 days? Vexthor asked. Yes, Jake said. I told you I barely slept. Cole, who had been sitting on his bed reading, spoke up. He is telling the truth. I am his roommate. I watched him work. He fell down so many times I lost count. His knees are covered with bruises, but he never gave up. He just kept trying. Vexthor set down the papers and looked around the small room. Then he looked back at Jake. Something had changed in his eyes. The coldness was gone. In its place was something warmer, something like understanding. I owe you an apology, Vexthor said quietly. Jake almost fell over in shock. The great instructor Vexthor, warrior of the Saurian Confederacy, was apologizing to him. In my culture, Vexthor continued, we have a saying. A warrior who cannot see beyond his own scales will never see the true battle. I looked at you and saw only weakness. I saw a human, a species with no natural weapons, no armor, no obvious fighting ability. I judged you before you had a chance to prove yourself. He placed a large hand on Jake's shoulder. The hand was heavy and covered in scales, but the touch was gentle. I was wrong, Vexthor said. You have shown me something today. Strength comes in many forms. The strongest warrior is not always the one with the biggest muscles or the sharpest claws. Sometimes the strongest warrior is the one who refuses to give up, who studies when others sleep, who learns from failure instead of being defeated by it. He turned to look at Cole, then back at Jake. Your species may not have natural weapons, but you have something that many warrior races lack. You have determination. You have the ability to adapt. You have minds that can analyze and learn at incredible speed. These are powerful weapons, perhaps more powerful than claws or scales. Jake felt his eyes getting wet. He had not realized how much he needed to hear those words. For 3 days he had pushed himself to his absolute limit, and there had been moments when he wondered if it was worth it. Now he knew it was. Thank you, instructor, Jake managed to say. Vexthor shook his head. Do not thank me. You earned this respect. You earned it with hard work and determination. He paused, then added, that performance today was remarkable. 13 seconds. Perfect form. I have been teaching the dragon form for 30 years, and I have never seen a first-time student execute it that well. It was not my first time, Jake pointed out. I failed pretty badly the first time. That was not a fair test, Vexthor said. You had only been training for a week. I should have given you more time before calling you out in front of the class. That was my mistake, not yours. He walked to the door, then turned back. Tomorrow I want you to assist me in class. I want you to show the other students your notes and explain your thought process. They can learn from you. I can learn from you. Me? Assist you? Jake could not believe what he was hearing. Yes, you have discovered something important. You approach the dragon form differently than any student I have ever taught. Instead of trying to copy me exactly, you analyzed the principles and adapted them to your own body. That is true mastery. Vexthor opened the door to leave, then paused one more time. I said some harsh things to you in class. I told you that humans should stick to diplomacy and trade. I want you to know that I no longer believe that. After today, I believe humans will make excellent warriors, not because of physical strength, but because of mental strength. He left, and the door slid closed behind him. Jake stood in the middle of his messy room, hardly able to believe what had just happened. Cole jumped up from his bed with a huge smile on his face. Did that really just happen? Cole asked. Did Vexthor just apologize to you? Did he just ask you to assist him in teaching? I think so, Jake said. He sat down on his bed because his legs were about to give out. I think he did. This is amazing, Cole said. You did it. You proved everyone wrong, Jake smiled. No, I just proved that humans belong here. That is all I wanted to do. News of what happened in Vexthor's class spread through Station Kepler 9 like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew about the human who had mastered the dragon form in 13 seconds. Aliens from all over the station stopped Jake in the hallways to ask him questions. Some were curious, some were skeptical, and some were just amazed. Jake walked into the training hall the next day feeling nervous. Assisting Vexthor in teaching was an honor, but it was also terrifying. He was just a student. Who was he to teach others? But when he entered the hall, he saw something that made him stop in surprise. The room was packed. There were not just the usual 30 students from his class. There were at least 60 beings in the room, maybe more. Students from other classes had come to watch. Some instructors from other departments were standing in the back. Everyone wanted to see the human who had shocked the entire academy. Vexthor stood at the front of the room. When he saw Jake, he gestured for him to come forward. Good morning, Jake Martinez. Thank you for agreeing to assist me today. Jake walked to the front, feeling dozens of eyes watching him. His heart was pounding, but he tried to stay calm. Yesterday, Vexthor announced to the class, this human student performed the dragon form perfectly in 13 seconds. Many of you have heard about this. Some of you do not believe it. Today, Jake will demonstrate again, and then he will explain his methods. Krath raised one of his forehands. Instructor, I do not mean to be disrespectful, but I still think there is some trick. Humans are not known for their physical abilities. How could he master a form that takes most species months to learn? Vexthor looked at Krath. That is exactly why Jake is here today. To show you that physical advantages are not everything. Jake, please demonstrate the form. Jake walked to the center of the mat. He took a deep breath, centered himself, and began. Just like yesterday, his movements were smooth and controlled. He flowed through the form without hesitation, his body moving with practiced precision. 13 seconds later, he finished in the dragon's rest position, balanced perfectly on one leg. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Seeing it on video was one thing. Seeing it in person was something else entirely. Jake lowered his leg and turned to face the class. Vexthor nodded at him. Now explain how you did this. Jake's mouth was dry. He had never spoken in front of so many beings before, but he had to try. When I first tried to learn the dragon form, he began, I failed. I failed badly. I could not balance. My movements were wrong. I was embarrassed. He paused. But I did not want to give up. So I went back to my quarters and I started studying. I watched videos of instructor Vexthor performing the form. I watched videos of other species performing it. And I noticed something. He gestured to the class. Every species does the form differently. Krath uses his forearms to help with balance. Lissa changes her density to shift her center of gravity. Pip uses his wings to make adjustments in the air. Everyone adapts the form to their own body. That is correct, Vexthor confirmed. The dragon form is not meant to be exactly the same for every species. It is a framework that each warrior must adapt to their own abilities. Right, Jake said. So I stopped trying to copy instructor Vexthor exactly. Instead, I tried to understand the principles. What is the form really about? What is it trying to teach? He walked to a display screen on the wall and pulled up one of his diagrams. It showed the human body with arrows indicating movement and balance points. The dragon form is about 3 things, Jake explained. Balance, momentum, and efficiency. Every movement has to maintain your center of gravity over your support point. Every transition has to use momentum from the previous movement. And nothing can be wasted. Lissa spoke up, her voice like chimes. But we have all been taught this. Why did you learn it faster than us? Jake thought about how to answer. I think it is because humans have to work harder than most species. We are not naturally strong or fast. We do not have extra limbs or special abilities. So we have learned to be efficient. We have learned to analyze problems and find solutions. He pulled up another diagram. For example, the dragon's ascent. This is where you balance on one foot while your body rotates. Most of you use physical strength to hold this position, but I cannot do that. I am not strong enough. So I had to find another way. He demonstrated, moving slowly. Instead of fighting to hold still, I use micro-movements. My foot makes tiny adjustments. My arms make small corrections. I am constantly moving to maintain balance, but the movements are so small that they look like stillness. Vexthor stepped forward. This is an important lesson. Jake discovered something that I have been teaching for years, but he discovered it through necessity rather than instruction. When you have advantages, you rely on them. When you do not have advantages, you have to think differently. He looked at the class. Jake's species has been in space for less than 10 years. They have no natural weapons. Their planet is harsh and unforgiving. They have survived by being smart, by adapting, by never giving up. These are the traits of true warriors. Pip flew down from the ceiling. Can you teach us your method? The way you think about the form? I can try, Jake said. He spent the next hour going through his notes with the class. He showed them his diagrams, explained his thought process, and demonstrated different parts of the form while explaining the principles behind each movement. The students were fascinated. Even the other instructors who had come to watch were taking notes. Jake was not just teaching them the dragon form. He was teaching them a new way to think about combat training. Krath approached Jake after class. The big alien looked embarrassed. I owe you an apology. I laughed at you. I said you should go home. I was wrong, Jake smiled. It is okay. I understand why you thought that. Humans do not look like warriors. Maybe not, Krath said. But after seeing what you can do, I think humans might be more dangerous than most warrior species. You do not rely on strength. You rely on intelligence. That is much harder to defend against. Over the next few weeks, Jake became something of a celebrity at the academy. More humans started applying to attend, inspired by his success. The academy administrators, who had been hesitant about accepting human students, suddenly became very interested in recruiting more of them. Vexthor changed his teaching methods. He started asking students to analyze the principles behind techniques instead of just copying movements. He encouraged them to adapt forms to their own bodies rather than trying to do everything exactly like him. His classes became more successful, and his students started advancing faster. 1 month after his famous demonstration, Vexthor called Jake to his office. The instructor's office was large and decorated with weapons from dozens of different cultures. Vexthor sat behind a desk made of dark metal. Sit down, Jake, the instructor said. Jake sat in a chair across from the desk. He had no idea why he had been called here. I have been thinking, Vexthor said, about you, about humans, and about what your success means for this academy. I have taught for 30 years. I have trained students from over 100 different species, but I have never seen anyone learn as fast as you did. Thank you, instructor, Jake said. I am not finished, Vexthor said. The Academy Council has asked me to recommend a new assistant instructor for combat training. Someone young, someone with fresh ideas, someone who can help us teach in new ways. Jake's eyes widened. You are recommending me? Yes, Vexthor said. You are only 16 years old, which would make you the youngest instructor in the Academy's history. But age does not matter if you have the skill and the knowledge, and you have both. I do not know what to say, Jake admitted. Say yes, Vexthor suggested. You have already been teaching? Students come to you for help all the time. Other instructors ask you questions. You might as well get paid for it. Jake laughed. Okay, yes, I would be honored to be an assistant instructor. Good, Vexthor said. You start next week. Your first assignment will be to develop a new curriculum for teaching the dragon form to different species. Use your methods. Teach students to think, not just to copy. As Jake walked out of the office, he could not stop smiling. 3 weeks ago, he had been the human who everyone laughed at. Now he was going to be an instructor. It felt like a dream, but it was not a dream. It was the result of hard work, determination, and refusing to accept what others said was impossible. That night, Jake sent a message home to Earth. He told his family about everything that had happened. He told them about failing in class, about 3 days of hard practice, about mastering the dragon form, and about becoming an instructor. His mother's response came a few hours later. I always knew you would do something amazing. You have the Martinez determination. When someone tells you that you cannot do something, you take it as a challenge. I am so proud of you. Jake read the message 3 times. Then he looked out his window at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, 300 light years away, but he did not feel homesick anymore. He had found his place in the galaxy. Humans were no longer the new species that no one took seriously. They were proving themselves as warriors, as scholars, as engineers, as explorers. They were showing the galaxy